Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Brian, Brian Lau, and I'm a front-end developer. Currently working. I've been working in the front-end industry for around 4 years. This would be my very first video on YouTube. I'm talking about like technical stuff on front-end development. Um, so yeah, the reason why I wanted to share a video on front-end related topic is that sometimes I find topics that are interesting and they're actually not very widely discussed on the internet space. I thought it would be nice if I can share some insights on some of the findings, some of the learnings that I did on technologies that are less known. I think that would be better. Maybe just good for a reference, and perhaps you learn something new. Yeah, the main motivation for this is that because some of my friends recommended me to give a YouTube talk and just share some of the learnings that I did. Because they really enjoyed the content when I was having a dinner with them and chatting with them of things that I'm paying attention to, things that I'm learning. So I think it might be a good opportunity for me to record and perhaps share it to a broader audience. Um, yeah, without further ado, I think today's topic is going to be about JSX. So I assume like as a front-end developer, you probably have or have at least heard of JSX. It is widely used in a lot of UI libraries such as React, Solid, um, and a couple of other ones that probably won't get mentioned here. Um, yeah, I stumbled upon JSX when I first started learning, about React. There's a documentation page that's solely about JSX, how you use it, how you interact with React. But the point that I'm gonna be giving here today isn't really about React. It's about JSX itself. So I find it quite interesting that I've been working with React for quite a few years, and I really haven't dove deeper into how it works with JSX, how the small components kind of work together and form something bigger. So I thought maybe I should do a little like a dive into how JSX works and what is it, what does it do, what are some of the benefits, and what are some of the trade-off per se. Um, and yeah, so the first thing I want to mention, when you type JSX on Google search, you actually wouldn't be like the first item that come up is actually an airline, which I think nobody heard of. And this is definitely not what I'm covering today. So I just find it kind of funny that when you type JSX, I would expect there will be a lot of like Stack Overflow or React document that would show up. Instead, airline actually showed up. So yeah. So let's talk about why do we need JSX, right? You know, JSX is nice, and we probably have been using it. And why, in the first place, would we want something like JSX? What does it do, and what does it replace? So I want you to imagine when you're writing plain HTML. So here's the simple code on HTML. Just a div with a title. And the thing is, if we want to be able to dynamically change the content, we probably need some help from JavaScript. So let's say if we want to probably create an element, which is like h1 title. Looks like I got an error there that says hi, which is a valid element, but just not a HTML element. So please pardon me on that. yeah, please forgive me on that. And so after you created the h1 element, you store it into a variable, and then you grab the parent DOM element, which in this case I'm using app ID, which is probably something that you would do in your React app, where you have a div with an app as an ID where you append your elements. So this is kind of the gist of it, like how you would append an element dynamically that doesn't exist on the page currently. So that kind of solved the problem of like having a kind of modular or a functional way of creating an element on HTML. But the problem is, well, not the problem. So the next step is to actually update it. You would want to grab the DOM element by tag ID, name, h1, and then the first item. So this returns an array, and you want to grab the first item, which in this case, you should only have one title on the page. So there should be only one items in the array. Anyway, so that's kind of sidetracked it, but yeah. So you grab the element, the h1, the title, and then you grab the text content, which is within its class and object. So yeah, if you don't understand how the text content work, is basically when you see an element on HTML, it's basically stored as an object, and the object has the tag h1. And on the high level, that's how we search on different elements on the page. So anyways, yeah, so you can reassign it to its finally changed. Then this will show up on your web page that the titles has already been updated. I would suggest you give it a try. If you don't understand this part, you can actually just grab the code here and paste it in your dev console. It should update the h1 that you have currently. Yeah, of course you need to find a correct ID or correct element to append to. Yeah, so now we have it updated. The problem is we have more than one element on the web page that we want to update. If you want to update every element, like all the elements that are interactive on the page, this would be too annoying. You would probably have few thousand lines of code just to update such a simple text contents. So we want more, right? We want more, and we want something that is more modular, more composable, more reusable, which is the terms that you hear quite often in the front end space. A lot of the libraries and framework are solving this problem exactly. So in modern days, right, like I said, we have a lot of interactivity on the page. So a really simple case to think about is having a div with h1 with a title that says like how many times it changed, probably on a click of a button or on page visit, that kind of stuff. But the point is, like, how would you interact? How would you dynamically change the X value? That is kind of the fun part of JSX, and this is where JSX kind of shine and chime in. So you So basically, I will just explain this code for a bit. Basically, you have a function that has some sort of state. It will render a HTML-like element here which is actually JSX. It has some sort of token or variable that you can use. Um, so that's where the concept of JSX kind of exists, is that you can write you know semantic JavaScript that is that's in JavaScript. You can update the the variable or token within the text dynamically. And yeah, today I think we're focusing more on the div and the title side. For this line here, where you have a const and set count. A count and set count, and a initial value with a callback. That is something that is very, very interesting. And I think I may probably do more research on that. But it is beyond the scope of this conversation, and this is more leaning towards to how different UI library kind of implement their state differently. So for React, we have like useState, hook, and for Signal we have something called create signal, which is somewhat somewhat similar, but they're very different on the implementation side. But this is a topic for another day. If you're interested, let me know in the comment or Twitter, whatever. Yeah, so basically, I hope you can agree with me that having this block of that dynamically changeable code is very, very useful when you have a lot of different components on your page. This is just a pretty basic example, but as you scale, you'll have probably like hundreds or thousands of components and pages that could change from totally different. Just use your creativity. So now that I hope you can agree with me, what is JSX and kind of why do we need it. Now I just want to take some time and pause. I just want to show you some of the facts that what JSX is. I pull all this directly from the JSX spec. I mean the documentation. And I'll just briefly go over it to let you understand, and you don't really have to read it if you don't want to. Yeah. So basically, JSX is actually a spec. It is not a proposal to incorporate it into JavaScript or into the browser or engine, because although it's a very highly extensible, highly modular component that we can probably integrate it into the MX script itself. But the problem is mostly because it will create a lot of compatibility issue. So for example, like let's say we're using HTML right now, and you all of a sudden just change it to JSX. Or you can have both of them at the same time. That would probably cause some confusion, and also compatibility, or how you can reduce the interface, kind of like the designs on the future of JavaScript. I think it was actually proposed once. It got to like stage 0. So I think in order to get fully integrated with JavaScript, there's like 3 stages or like 4 stages. So stage 0 is somewhere you just people propose it and see how it goes, and I think it kind of stopped there. Yeah, got a little bit sidetracked. So basic, and yeah, JSX is a XML like syntax extension to MS script as a feature without any like defined semantics, which is basically saying it doesn't have any additional features that you would want it to have. You, however, could extend it if you want to. That's kind of the beauty of the design. Yeah, so it was more intended to be used by various like preprocessors, aka like transpiler. Those transpiler would transform the tokens, which we would explain later on when we go into the TypeScript playground, into like standard MS Script format. Yeah. So here's more. Yeah. So just again, JSX is a syntax where parser can be used, and parsers such as like ESLint, TypeScript, even Tailwind, or Prettier and Syntax Highlighter are all capable of transpiling JSX. Although there may be some downside of it may not be like 100% compatible, but you can. From what I heard is like the libraries can usually create a thin layer of wrapper to define the semantics. Yeah, so that's why I feel like this is a very nicely designed spec, because you can it, it has a fairly good interface, and with good implementation, good documentation, and very highly extendable. Yeah, yeah, it is designed as a MS Script feature, and it's very similar to XML, but it's only similar in terms of like syntax. Again, the implementation kind of varies, and the syntax is actually not that similar as well. I think it kind of borrowed from XML. If you have time, just take a look of XML as well. I think it's kind of cool. And it works for all sorts of like fancy, modern front end. How do we call it? Front end rendering, such as like server side rendering. It worked quite well. I think there's some times where they was kind of figuring out how it could work, and it could go into like each UI library. I think around like 2000, that's the conversation around 2016 for React. If you're interested, I think I also have a resources below that's kind of pointing to where they have that conversation. Yeah, so just to give a little bit of demo here, TypeScript playground, how it could work with the transpiler, like what does it do. So here I only have like 4 lines, which is kind of weird, but I want to make it weird, and so that you can understand what happened. Basically, I'm creating a div. There's some names, some props, some ternary functions, not functions, like conditions, and then like an empty div, some text, and then another conditions. So basically what happened is like it under the hood, after it was transpiled, it would be I think for TypeScript it was using a React transpiler under the hood, but you could actually swap that out and use something else to create your own or whatever. So what I'm trying to say is this is not limited to React. Yeah. So basically what happened is like it would create an element called div and then object assign, where I mentioned earlier where you have an element actually is an object where you can assign stuff in there. Um, yeah. And to create like empty div, a string, condition, you can kind of get the gist of it. It's pretty cool. So I think I've mentioned enough like benefits. I want to mention some of the trade-offs that it has. I mean, the only trade-off that I can see and tell is that it is not really embedded into the language itself, so therefore it requires the transpiler to have it to work. That kind of creates some overhead when you want to use it, but it's also nice because you can fully customize to your liking and how you want it to behave. That's kind of the trade-off when using JSX. Yeah, JSX, you can use your creativity to do all sorts of stuff, like think about how you can add classes like style classes to it, how you can add reference to it, how you can add reactivity, virtual DOM, how it would like interact with each other, and control flow, all this stuff. The list goes on. I think there definitely is a lot of potential that you can work on this. But yeah, I think it's quite cool. You can twist it and break it and build it, and it was still kind of work. And I thought that would be pretty cool, and that's why I want to make this video about JSX. Yeah. So, oh, by the way, JSX actually created by React. I mean, not React, by Facebook, which is now Meta. You can check out the document here. This is the official documentation. It's pretty interesting. Yeah, here are some of the lists that I found. Some of the readings that I read and find it quite interesting. If you really want to dive deep into how Solid.js uses JSX, I highly recommend you to check out this video by Ryan Coniato, which is the author of Solid.js, and he explained it in like 5 hours on how this would work. Yeah, I will share this in my blog. And I still haven't write the blog yet, but you can check out the links there, and I'll have this this whole blog post up there maybe soon. If I didn't upload it, please remind me. Yeah, and thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Do let me know if you liked it or you don't like it, or if I make some pretty big mistakes, and be sure to correct me, because I don't want to point people to one direction. This is more like knowledge sharing, that I want to share what I know and what is cool. And yeah, if you want to check out the blogs, it is under brian/lau.ca blog. If you want to connect with me, I also have all my socials on brianlau.ca/socials. Yeah, that's it for today, and hopefully I will be upload more of this this kind of video later. Make sure you give it a like, and comment, and you don't really have to subscribe. This is just let me know, because it'll be very, very nice if I can have some feedback on how I do, and if I'm talking nonsense, that would be pretty bad. So yeah, have a good rest of the day and enjoy.